together, and I'm glad you had it with us tonight. We have a few quick announcements before we leave class. And first of all, this coming Sunday is potluck, so here it is already. We, of course, then would have our evening service bumped from 6 o'clock back to 1:30 for the first Sunday of the month. And this, which means this Saturday would normally be our men's business meeting. We had originally bounced that to be for a few minutes tonight after class. So we'll try and get you guys together shortly after and make a little visiting time and then get together. We'll try and leave. James Lynn said that his mother, Barb, goes in for surgery the 21st of October for carpal tunnel. And since he was violent, she's away with testers on. Randy had mentioned that his sisters-in-law, both Sissy and Ben Rainford, out of Tennessee, who's right now recovering from the chemo treatment for her cancer, which they did not eliminate, but want much prayers for her and her family, and also his other sister-in-law, Cynthia, who is also dealing with cancer. So an awful lot for that family to go through. I know Ms. June will be having surgery first part of November, I believe, on her knee. Is that accurate? And then Nate's neighbor, our neighbor, Dave Quincy, was dealing stage 4 pancreatic cancer and not been doing very well last time. Would you get an update today? Okay. So if you keep Dave Quincy in prayers, it'd be much appreciated, as well as our friend Jan over in Cedar Edge, who will be in Florida to go visit, spend some time with my dad, and also with Jan and Mark. And the Church of Delta is going to be having a booth at the Apple Fest where we normally hang out on the weekend, and we'll be helping them similar to what we did here at the Harvest Festival, which is their first time doing that. So keep the church in prayers there, and the result of your prayers is a good thing to do. Now, the Wilcoxes are in Austria as we speak. All is well, last night. They'll be back in late December, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, you want to keep Sarah's baby girl and Brett's on birth. She's due somewhere around November 18th. And there's, therefore, in the bulletin, an announcement for a shower for that sweet baby, and that is for October 17th, Saturday, at 2 p.m. here in the building. Guys, I hate to break it to you, but the last time we joined the ladies in a baby shower, we made such an impression that they didn't invite us back. So, well done, guys. Can I say that? I mean, anyway, it's ladies only, is what I'm really trying to say. The information, I think, is out there, but if you have any questions, Mom Carol or my wife can sure answer those. All right. I know there are probably others, there are updates out of time, I'm sure. Updates on the announcements. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yeah, Honey Foster's dad, again, out in Tennessee, and we've been praying for quite some time, dealing with health issues, and he just had tests that produced cervical cancer, and everything came back clean. And so we stunned everybody, including the doctors, with that one. And so far, it's been a while now that that's the case. But once again, he's doing quite well. And so I wanted to thank the congregation for prayers. All right. Well, at the Harvest Festival, we were blessed enough to come across Jacob and Terry, and as it just so happens, connections through social media as well as connections through Northwest Congregation, where we know that Jacob just somewhat recently found the Lord and put him on baptism and was brought to him mainly through the book of Muscle and Shovel, and we invited him to kind of tell his story tonight. And not only that, but we also get the grand prize winner sitting next to him as far as guessing the number of how many dum-dums were in the jar, in case you're wondering, not to embarrass you, but to embarrass you. So, good job, Terry. And we had just, a great conversation and thought, hey, let's set it up. So he was kind enough to do that, and we're looking forward to it. So I don't want to take any more of your time, and we'll have a quick prayer and turn it over to Jacob. We'll look forward to that. Let's go. Father in heaven, Lord, we thank you for your church, for the beauty of your Lord. We pray that you would help us to shine your light to the world that is in such need, Lord. We thank you, Father, for your word of truth. Father, help us to be better studies of your word and knowledge of your word. Lord, we thank you for watching over, protecting us, and hearing our prayers as you do, Lord. We know there are so many who are struggling at this time. For Sissy and for Cindy and their battles with cancer, and family, Lord, that they help them. For Dave Lipsy and his, Lord, in this battle, for your strength and comfort on him, and not just physically, Lord, but spiritually, that you would help us to have opportunity to reach out and get conversation with them about you. Plant seeds and lead you, Lord. Father, we pray for Miss Jan, Sister Jan, that she's also battling breast cancer and her recovery from surgery. We pray for her. Father, we know that you are the God of all creation. You are the one and only true and living God. We thank you for the peace, comfort, and joy, mercy, and grace that comes only in Christ Jesus, Lord. Father, we praise your great name in Jesus.
Thank you all for coming out. This is wonderful. It was funny too. When Charity and I decided to go to the Harvest Festival, we went a year prior, but then we were just walking by and then we saw the sign. And I didn't even read the sign, Miller Street Church of Christ, because we saw a bunch of other church booths there. But we were reading their paper, like what was the weapon that Samson used when fighting an army and all those other things. And I was like, oh yeah. And then I totally was like, oh hey, how's it going, guys? I didn't know you were here. Well, thank you all for coming out. Wow. As Chris kind of touched on, it's funny. Wow, what's it been? Man, September 25th. It's been 2 years since I obeyed the gospel, and man, has a lot happened since then. How many of you actually got to go out and see Michael Shank when he was at Golden Church of Christ? Anybody? When he was here?
I saw him at Bear Valley.
You saw him at Bear Valley? Okay, he was also at Bear Valley, yeah. Yeah, so it was kind of neat just to kind of touch on it. All right. Well, I guess kind of before I kind of go into the story, I mean, that's what you guys came out to hear. I had to really ponder this. Coming out, giving my testimony and trying to understand, I was like, well, you don't hear about that a whole lot in the Lord's church, giving testimonies and things. I mean, you kind of see that more in the denominational world. I mean, if you kind of look at it, it's kind of like what they mostly go off of. Oh, hear our testimony, hear this testimony. So I really had to think about that. I mean, what does it really mean to give a testimony? And to give a testimony really means it's evidence for something that is true. And I was like, well, what was Jesus' testimony? What was John the Baptist's testimony? And you just got to keep thinking of all the Gospels and all the stories. And I mean, what was the testimony of the kingdom? And what was the testimony of Jesus' miracles? Even when demons would come out and say, please don't. Yeah, I mean, you got to think of it. Those are big things. So for me, I'm like, okay, well, I think probably the best place to put this is when giving a personal testimony, especially for me. And this is where you really have to humble yourself, especially speaking in front of a room. I'm going to try to watch my time. I don't know how long I got. Unfortunately, I'm marrying a woman that says, "You talk more than me." I'm like, "Oh, great." At least that's what her mother says. So I'm like, "Okay, awesome." So we can just talk. She'll be like, "Hey, it's 2 hours already." No, I'm just kidding. But no, giving a personal testimony, especially as us as Christians, it doesn't really prove anything. You are the only person. It's just your word, and it's what they claim to feel or think. And Jesus talked about this reality. If I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true. John 5:31. He isn't saying he would lie, but that his own personal claims would not prove he was the Christ. That is why he went to call upon the witness of John, God, the miracles he did, and the Bible to prove his claims. A personal testimony is just merely words. It's a claim of evidence, but it proves nothing. If we receive the witness of men, the witness of God is greater, for this is the witness of God for which he has testified of his Son, 1 John 5:9. And if I'm going to give a testimony, I want to think it's not about me. It's about what God has done in my life. And if I can share that to other people and show what the gospel is capable of doing when you meet, or no, actually not when you meet, it's where Jesus comes and meets where you're at and changes your life. So as the disciples did, when asked for a testimony, they offered up evidence of God. He who believes in the Son of God has the witness in himself. He who does not believe God has made him a liar, because he has not believed the testimony that God has given his Son. And this is the testimony, that God has given us eternal life, and this life is in his Son. He who has the Son has life. He who does not have the Son of God does not have life. These things I have written to you who believe in the name of the Son of God, that you may know that you have eternal life, and that you may continue to believe in his name of the Son of God. 1 John 5:10 through 13. So, let my testimony be the evidence of God and what he's done in my life. So, kind of backstory. It's kind of funny. Normally I piece together teens class on Sunday mornings for at Northwest, and I was like, well, this is a lot different because this is kind of like my life. So just, I guess, back history. Growing up, I grew up at the farthest points away from a church building or anything religious that you could ever imagine. My parents, they got divorced when they were separated before I was even born, and then they got divorced in 95, so I was about 2. So I didn't know what a family unit looked like, or a home, because I would always go back and forth. And of course all the fighting and stuff like that. And then growing up, going to schools and in and out of school and stuff, life didn't make sense. That was considered the usual for me. That was just the way life was. This is how you live, this is the meaning. The weirdest thing, I never questioned my existence, my being. Then again, I was never encouraged to do that. And anytime, actually, the only time you'd ever hear Jesus in my name in my household was not for a very good reason. It was usually more in vain than that. And to look back on it and be like, all right, nobody in my family, or immediate family, or family going outward, nobody in my family is a Christian. None of them. So, except one side of them, but they're half family. They're Baptists. And yes, they're very good, sweet, loving people, but they want to follow John Calvin. I can understand that. But so growing up, it was just kind of different. And then the struggles, I thought relationships, you always have to have conflict and fighting, and that's just how it is. Lo and behold, wow, once you have Christ in your life, wow, everything makes so much sense. It's called listening and willing to humble yourself before your spouse or a family member and be like, okay, let's take this to the Lord first, because he can help us through this. So kind of just understanding that, it was just a whole different world. And then I was about 18 years old, going on 19, and I ended up moving to Hawaii. Me and my dad, he went back home. That's where he's from, Honolulu, Hawaii. And my mom, she left when I was 7, so she likes to go find love in other places and comfort in other places. So she's married to my stepdad in Florida currently. They're doing well as far as I can tell you. Don't really hear from her. But other than that, my dad, we went to Hawaii, and we basically went out there with no job, no money, and no idea where we would stay. I can't picture how that just lined up logically with some But anywho, he made it work. But for me, that was the point in time of my life I started questioning. I was like, what does this all mean? Why am I even here? Why are there so many bad things in the world? Why doesn't it make sense? Why is the world like this? And if there is a God, then what? Those are the seeds that your mind then starts planting in you, where then you're like, okay, see what God can do with those seeds. And I'm very thankful what he did in the long run, but at the point in time, not so much. Due to conflict, I ended up leaving Hawaii and came back, and then I stayed with my aunt and uncle. That's my dad's half-sister, and then his brother-in-law, Aunt Danielle. I stayed with them, and they have 5 kids. 14 to 6. Yeah, 2 boys and 3 girls. I was like, okay, I have 2 older brothers. I grew up as a single child. I'm very thankful for that. Because growing up with older brothers, it could never end well, you know? But they were my half-brothers, so they're all and about. Brother Jeff's in the Air Force in Minot, North Dakota, where it's 50 below. And Nick lives here. But he was always with my mom. So I grew up as an only child, so then going to a household that has 5 kids and learning what teasing was, oh boy, that was weird. I wasn't used to that, the sibling conflict or just picking on one another. I mean, I was always, this is mine, go away, this is mine. But no, I went with them, and then yes, these are also the ones in my family who are Baptist. And I didn't know anything about church, but the next day I got in, they took me out to lunch, and I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, no education, no job. I'm 18, no license. What are we going to do with that? Awesome. I was sheltered to a point where then my dad kind of wouldn't let me go out to go do anything, because then our house was very closed off, and nobody would come in either. It's very dark. That was kind of my childhood. So yeah, I didn't have any of the above that would make it so then I could be able to go out into the world. They sat me down, they're like, okay, I'll never forget it. My Uncle Andy, wonderful man, he's like 6'3", he's up there. And I'm like, okay, hi, how are you? I don't know you. I would see them on holidays. He's like, I want to see some forward direction and some forward movement and growth. And I was like, huh? Responsibility? What? These are words I've never heard in my life. And he's like, you're going to get a job. I'm going to get a what? I'm going to do, You work? I can go mow some lawns. That's easy, but go get a real job. I had no idea. So then, no, they sat me down. We kind of made a plan. He's like, okay, if you're going to stay with us, you're going to go to church. I'm like, okay. Thankfully, at 18, going on 19-ish, I wasn't a rebellious kid. I already had it in my mind growing up. I'm not going to be a worldly person in the sense that I can't stand alcohol. I can't stand drugs or smoking. I didn't want to be in those scenes. I couldn't be around that. And thankfully, I never got mixed up in girls at that point in time in my life. Because, you know, those teenagers, oh, we know everything. No, you don't know anything. So it was I'm very thankful for a lot of things. Things I missed out on, the things that just kind of turned out. So then being put into this new situation, I'm like, okay, cool, yeah, I'll go to church on Sundays. And they tried to share their version of the gospel to me. Yes, faith alone. I understood that, kind of. But then what really changed everything and what kind of headed it down a path that I'm very thankful how God's providence worked through everything. And you're going to be able to see that here. They took me to a play. It's called the Passion Play of Denver or something like that. And they put it on every Easter around in there, every before Easter. It's the Passion Play of Denver. And literally it's the Gospel of John in a play format. So it's his birth, or not even his birth, it's just Jesus' ministry all the way across the board. And it was kind of neat. I had no idea. I was like, okay, yeah, let's go see this. I was blown away. I got to actually see, lo and behold, I didn't read the Bible, but I did go see a play about it. And then to see at the end, Jesus being hung on a cross, or the actor being hung on a cross, it kind of triggered something in me where I was like, I don't know what's going on. And of course, at the end, they did ask if you believe Jesus with all your heart, do you want to accept him, come to the front of the stage? So they did want me to believe in the sinner's prayer. I didn't know what the differences were then, so of course I did. I accepted it. I thought that's what you did. That's the first inclination of Christianity I thought was right. And I didn't know any better. And they didn't really encourage me to read the Bible a whole lot either. They just told me to go off what they said. So I was like, okay. Very impressionable teenager, not really knowing a whole lot. So going from there and then doing the sinner's prayer, being like, oh, okay, cool, what does this mean? I understood the gospel because I saw it, but it wasn't necessarily the whole gospel. I understood what Jesus has done. But with that picture, I didn't respond correctly. And I know that. I know that now. And then like 2 months later, I was baptized. As an outward sign of an inward change. I think that's in the tulip in there somewhere. Somewhere, maybe. And it's actually kind of funny because then Charity, now get this. Previously, the preacher that is for the church that my aunt can go to, his name is Mike, Pastor Mike, he goes by. Charity, she comes from a, okay, let's see if I can get this right. It's a independent free will fundamental Baptist? Yeah, let's go with all of those. So basically, they don't believe in Calvinism at all. Well, she had him when he was like that, and then he moved, and then I had him when he was Calvinistic. And I was like, whoa, we were baptized in the exact same church building. And I was like, are you serious? That was just kind of funny. It was coincidental. Our fate. No. That's why I'm marrying her in 24 days. No? No, I thought that was funny. But no, so it was just kind of weird to see that and then be baptized. And of course, they gave me a little book. I didn't understand it. Nobody decided to teach me. Nobody showed me. So I'll never forget it. I was sitting there one day at the kitchen table at my aunt's house, and a thought popped in my head. Well, if Baptists are the only ones that are right, why are there so many other denominations? I then said that out loud to my aunt. She's like, you don't need to go search the answer to that question. Come again? So then that was kind of where I left it. I was like, oh, okay, never mind. Guess I don't need to go do that. But yet it still hung on. Why are there so many denominations? And then, yeah. So basically where they live basically on 128th and Quebec. And before that is Hawley. And there's a Anythink library over there on Hawley and 120th. So I would go to that library all the time and go to their Christian section. I would just go look. I would see cool books on apologetics. I didn't know what it was at the time. I was just like, ooh, it's Christian. Everything is okay. It doesn't matter how you get there. Kind of like the Baskin-Robbins adage, oh, 31 flavors. No, only one gets to Christ. I'm sorry. Not all of them. Yes, they're all ice cream, but still. Rocky Road. I'm just kidding. And so I kept questioning, and I kept trying to learn. And then more conflict. It kind of things just didn't work. So then I ended up leaving my Aunt Danielle, and I would still go to the church. I would live on 52nd and Sheridan. I'd go up to 160. I'd go to Highway 7 all the time for church. Starts at 7:30. Whew, that was a drive. I would still do that. And okay, get this. I've driven past Northwest Church of Christ my entire life. Never saw the sign. Never saw the sign. So then the day that I actually was moving out of my Aunt and Danielle's house, now, you can call it a feeling, you can call it God's providence or the Spirit within me. Yes, I know I didn't have the Spirit, but doesn't mean He can't work in my life. I had the weirdest inclination sitting there on 128th and Hawley to turn left and go to that library. No idea why. I'm like, I'm going all the way to 52nd. I'm not going to be able to return a library book. I went anyway. Walk in, there's one new book on the shelf. One. Because I have a photographic memory, so I knew all the books that were on there. And then I see that. And I'm like, muscle and shovel. Get the back and start looking at it, and then, oh, look at there, Baptist preacher's response. I'll read it because I'm a Baptist, right? Sure. So I was like, that makes so much. That was enough to sell me right there. This story provoked me on spiritual levels I didn't know existed. I want to be provoked on spiritual levels. That sounds good to me. All right. I then took it home. And at this point in time, I ended up meeting, if you guys read what's on Michael Shane's website, Ariel LaFleur. She's now Ariel Roberts. She is married now. We ended up breaking up November 20th, 2013. She's married to Jacob Roberts, and I'm Jacob Rutledge. It's kind of weird at first, but we got past it. We're like, okay, awesome. She's doing wonderful. She's been on many mission trips out there at the Lafayette Church with Ira. I forgot his last name. Ira, I couldn't pronounce it. But no, she's doing great. But no, I got this book and we were dating, and we have smartphones, so there's an app called Tango. For iPhone, it's probably FaceTime, but for Android, it's Tango. You can download it, so you can see each other on the front-facing camera. Now, I got this book. I spent about 3 days reading through it, and of those 3 days after everything that I've known about Christianity, I wanted to tear the book and light it on fire. It literally created a response in me where I'm like, I'm mad, but I couldn't put it down. I could not stop reading it. And then I was like, Ariel, you got to hear this book. Because then what she knew of, she was raised Catholic, and then she then became Christian, probably more Baptist leaning, but then she had also watched the televangelists on the TV and all them, the health and wealth gospel. Yeah. So she'd watched that. But then I was like, I need to read this to you. Oh my goodness, you need to hear this story. And then we spent about a week reading this. And every night, we would read a couple chapters and then go to bed. And every night we'd then continue reading chapters and learning about Michael's story. And then also hearing, whoa, that was a lie? That wasn't right? And then going forward to see, what does the Bible really say, and matching that up to what really happened to you. To really testing yourself and the conversion and to where you worship and to what style of worship. And it kind of just, it blew my mind, and I was like, okay. And then towards August 22nd, she was then baptized before me. We were able to find a preacher. Michael Shank was able to call and find a preacher out there and a church, and she drove actually quite a ways from her little town to another bigger little town, because it's in Louisiana, so they got a lot of little towns out there. But they're spread out. And no, thankfully she was then baptized, and then I then happened to have enough money where then I flew her out here, and we met for the first time, which was super awesome. And then I was on the phone, and I went to a few Churches of Christ. I didn't come to this one, clearly. I went to a few. I went to one that was being bought by a covenant church, so they were going to have female pastors. And I was like, I don't know about that. That didn't sound right to me, based off of what I'd learned from Muscle and Shovel. And then I went to another one that was the Denver Church of Christ, but then that's one that kind of expands up to Boulder. That's the International Churches of Christ. So they were the ones that kind of broke off back to the older folks that know the Boston movement. And then I kind of researched that to understand. I'm like, oh, that. And then we went to the Flatirons Mall on a Saturday. Me and her were driving around. I was taking her back to her hotel room. And then literally I was like, what are we going to do tomorrow? Where are we going to go? I don't know. And furthermore, where can I obey the gospel? First time in my life, driving down Sheridan, heading southbound, past 104th going down, look to my right-hand side, Northwest Church of Christ. See the sign for the first time in my life, and I'm like, did you see the sign? Google it, hurry. And we get the times, and then we then were like, we're ready. We go there for worship, and we walk in. I'm like, wow, it's a big place. Oh my goodness, I was so excited. Everybody was super nice, and I was like, okay, this is different. Then we start worship, and based off of what the Bible teaches for worship, I was like, we're singing. Where's the piano? I went to a Baptist church with a piano and a box drum and an acoustic guitar. Yeah. So kind of seeing that and then actually seeing it in practice, I was like, oh goodness, what is going on? It was perfect. I was like, I finally found it. And this all took course over maybe a month and a half of reading the book and being like, okay, we need to be serious. And Michael was such a big help. I mean, he was there for me all the time, especially when I'd call and I'd be concerned about something. I'm like, I don't understand. What's going on here? And I'm thankful for that day I turned to go to the library. That's all I could ever point it to. Be like, God was like, you're going here now. Okay, here's your sign. No. And as we finished up with worship, we then spoke with Sam Pace, the preacher there. And that was September 22nd, exactly a month after Ariel had been baptized. And then he's like, yeah, hey, why don't you come back Wednesday, the 25th? And I was like, yeah, sure, awesome. So then we waited, and me and her would always discuss and stuff, and we'd talk, and we'd be like, okay, well, what's going to happen? I had no idea he was going to baptize me, because The last time I said that to a church, they're like, no, let's wait a few months. And that was the International Church of Christ. They didn't want to baptize me right away. I told them the conversion of Saul. I was like, this is what the Bible says. They didn't want to. I was like, I'd never been told no before. I was like, really? So I was kind of shut back. I was like, okay, so I'm probably going to get told no again. And then we sat down in Sam's office, and I was like, all right, well, this is what I know, this is what I understand, and I was like that, and then it was just kind of that awkward silence where you're just like, and he didn't say anything. He's like, well, what do you think we should do about this? I'm like, well, you kind of know what I need. I know what I need. And he's like, well, I think we should baptize you. And I'm like, wait, really? I was expecting to, like, you can come back next Sunday or something. I didn't know. I mean, this is the second church I've ever been to in my life. And the first one was weird. Come to find out after starting reading through Michael's book and testing it. And I was just like, all right. So then, yeah, we literally walked down into the auditorium, which is funny. I remember talking on the phone to Chris. I was like, hey, so am I going to be speaking in an auditorium or is there classrooms? He's like, as soon as you walk in the door, you're going to laugh at that question. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, it's a building. I've never been here. I was like, oh, all right. And no, we then got into the water, and that's when Ariel was taking some photos, and that's the one you see on Michael Shank's website. And I was just like, wow, I finally was able to obey the gospel at 20 years old. That's huge. I was like, all right, I had just turned 20. Yeah, that September 15th, and then I was baptized that 25th. And now from there, of course, there was the thing where then Ariel broke up with me. Yeah, that was hard. I mean, that was the first like real girlfriend I thought I had. You know, I never really had a girlfriend before. I was awkward before. I'm still awkward. What are you talking about? Ask my fiance. She'd be like, he's weird. and you know, there were struggles. There were struggles where then, I mean, trying to grow, trying to know Christ, trying to understand, trying to see, reading through the Gospels and understanding the epistles and Paul's teaching and trying to see Jesus, how does that apply to my life today? How do I live that out? Knowing, being a Christian that wants to follow the Bible and then seeing everyone else. I woke up Christian today. Yep, no, I come from a Christian home. That therefore makes me a Christian. Or meeting people, yeah, I said the sinner's prayer. You know, there's a bigger battle out there trying to be a Bible-believing Christian